Five, four, three, two, one.
All right. Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa. It's time for the Amish Inquisition yet again, episode 163 on Sunday the 13th of December. I'm Amish Phil.
I'm Amish Ben.
And I'm Amish Matt.
And tonight's guest is TJ Branham. He's the author of the Lockwood Code, and he's been researching this character called Ingersoll Lockwood. How are you doing, TJ?
Good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's I was watching your YouTube videos earlier to try and get a flavour of what's going on. I mean, it's a really sort of strange subject to find yourself looking at. How did you get into all this?
Yeah, quite by accident, actually. Years and years and years ago, I saw this like History Channel documentary about something called the Bible Code. And I kind of just had it on the background. I'm not really a religious person or anything like that, but it got interesting. Basically, it was about this group of rabbis who claimed to have found a code in the Torah and using something called equidistant letter sequence codes, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically the simplest form of a code. Like, imagine if I was like a spy and I wanted to send a secret message to another spy. And I gave him a book, like any book. It could be whatever. Just say it was like To Kill a Mockingbird or something like that. And, you know, to the normal person, it looks like they're just carrying around a book of To Kill a Mockingbird. But if I give my spy guy the key, and I say the key is, let's just say it's 5. And he knows that if he counts every 5 letters, you know, ignoring punctuation and spaces and things like that, that it'll spell out my secret code. And that's kind of basically what these guys, long time ago, these rabbis discovered with the Torah. And the first one that one of the rabbis discovered was that if you count, beginning with the first book of Genesis, every 300 letters, it spells out the word Torah. And it's like, okay, well, you know, big deal. That's kind of interesting, but it's not a very big word, and you're counting 300 letters.
Yep.
You know, whoop-de-doo. That could just be coincidence.
Yeah.
And they just, you know, they continue to refine it to find codes, but it really didn't get interesting until computers came along, because, you know, humans can only do so much. And basically what these rabbis were doing was they were taking, if you can imagine, you know, they're taking the entire Bible and, you know, writing it out in one long basic sentence, you know, that stretches miles and miles, and skipping letters and trying to find things. You know, that would take a human being, you know, decades, if not more, almost impossible. But once computers came along and could, you know, form them into matrices and, you know, use algorithms and things like that, it became quite easy. So a gentleman that really made it popular, Michael Drosnin, who recently died, he actually wrote a book. I actually got a copy of it right here, called The Bible Code. And my screen mirrored, so it probably looks backwards, but
yep, that's fine.
This was popular in the 90s, and it's basically what the documentary I saw was based on. And basically, he was a journalist who got in touch with a mathematician in Israel who basically became obsessed with this Bible code thing. And he was a mathematician, and he basically found that supposedly hidden in the Bible were all sorts of secret messages and things like that, very specific things using equidistant letter sequences. And he would just, you know, plug in his computer and he would just let it run all night back in the, you know, 80s, 90s, back when computers were much slower. So it would take forever to decode things. And he'd find really interesting things. Like he'd find, like there was information about the JFK assassination. There was information about World War I, World War II, Hitler. all these things. And so he published it in a mathematics paper, the Journal of Mathematics. And he was an atheist. He wasn't, the super religious person. So he didn't really believe that it was divine intervention or anything like that. He sort of came at it as an interesting puzzle, is the way he put it.
An anomaly.
That's kind of the way I come about it too. I fully admit that these things could be just random chance, probability and things like that. Particularly with the Bible, it's such a large text. If you're searching for certain keywords by skipping letters, there's only so many letters, there's only so many words. Eventually you're going to find them.
Right.
But where it becomes interesting is when you search for those words and they become clustered together and form interesting things.
Right. So this is where sort of statistical significance becomes an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And people have criticized this before, which is fully understandable because, there's been people that have debunked it by taking a copy of Moby Dick and searching for things. And they found things like the JFK assassination in Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if we search for these things, we're going to find them. So that kind of filed that away back in my brain. I never really thought about it. And then about 2015, I read an article that kind of went viral on social media about this author named Ingersoll Lockwood, who wrote these books in the late 1800s. And they basically, what the article talked about was how they had similarities to and parallels to Donald Trump. And Ingersoll wrote these two children's novels that centered around a character named Barron Trump. And as you know, Donald Trump has a son named Barron Trump.
Yep.
So the author, picked up the books and read them, and he discovered some really interesting things. The novels basically tell a story about this little German boy who goes by Barron Trump. And he just basically, it's kind of like an Alice in Wonderland ripoff in a way. They're not very interesting books if you read them just from a narrative standpoint. If they didn't have anything in contact with, if they didn't have anything similar with Donald Trump or anything like that, they really wouldn't be that interesting. And they never really caught on. He never really entered the children's literature lexicon or anything like that.
Well, he wasn't an author by trade, was he?
No, he was a lawyer.
Yeah.
Ingersoll. We don't know too much about him. We know he's born in 1841, died in 1918. He spent some time as a diplomat. Abraham Lincoln appointed him as a diplomat, one of the youngest diplomats, actually. So we have some writings from that time period and things like that. But he's mostly known as being a lawyer. He came from a family of lawyers. And, he wanted to be an author, so he wrote books. And like I said, it really feels like he was trying to rip off Alice in Wonderland. Children's literature in that form, fantastical form, was popular at that time. So I think he was trying to jump on the bandwagon of that. And that's kind of how it reads. It kind of reminds me of the cheesy B movies that kind of try to capitalize on the big blockbusters. But yeah, we don't know too much about him as far as his personal life or anything like that goes. Just that he practiced law. He was a diplomat for a while, and he wrote these books that people at the time really didn't like. If you read the reviews of them, they were like, this is boring, this is stupid, it's dumb. But, fast forward years later, now we look at it through the eyes of someone who knows who Donald Trump is, and it gets interesting, because you got basically the kid gets in and out of adventures, and he goes to Russia, and he gets into an adventure in Russia, runs into some interesting people there, and he loves to offend people. He's really into that.
Really?
Yeah.
Quite obnoxious.
He likes to, yeah. He likes to come up with personal insult nicknames for people.
Oh, really? Like Sleepy Joe?
Sounds, yeah, exactly like Sleepy Joe. Or Pocahontas, as he likes to call Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Crooked Hillary.
Yeah.
And he's very insulting to women, Barron Trump is. He's always trying to get into entanglements with women and things like that, even though he's a young boy, which is interesting. But and he lives in a place called Castle Trump, which is very interesting. Kind of has parallels to Trump Tower.
Yeah,
it's in New York.
Oh, right.
So it's located. Yeah.
Better,
So
yeah.
just all these little things that kind of added up, and it was interesting. There were interesting coincidences.
Yeah.
So reading it from that standpoint, it became interesting.
Right.
And somehow I kind of drew the line where I was like, God, I remember these things called ELS codes. And I was like, I wonder if anyone has ever tried them with this guy's work. Because it should be interesting, because if it's a character named Trump, maybe I'll find just some funny, interesting things. And I kind of went from that point. I wasn't like thinking it would be serious or anything like that. It was like, maybe I could find some humorous things that I could share with people and it would be funny.
Yeah.
And so, I downloaded some software programs that do ELS codes and formatted the text in a manner that I can search through it, and just randomly started, looking for stuff. And obviously the first thing I tried to look for was Donald Trump. And, since there's a character named Trump, obviously I found some stuff. But then I just kept getting more and more specific and looking for harder and harder things to kind of beat that statistical gap of, okay, am I finding something random or am I finding something interesting? And the more I searched, just the more amazed I was at how specific some of the things were that I was finding regarding like COVID-19, George Floyd, Joe Biden. It's even got Sleepy Joe Biden in there. Right. Like it has the nickname Sleepy Joe Biden. It's got coronavirus, COVID-19. If you take the Roman numerals for 19, that's in there.
Right.
And they cluster around all these interesting things. And what amazed me was these aren't very large novels. Like, they're kids' books. They're, like 200 pages or so.
Right.
So to find this much specific things in such a small amount of text was just very intriguing to me. And I don't know why they're there. I'm not, like I said, I'm not like a religious person, so I don't think it's like divine intervention. I don't necessarily think Ingersoll Lockwood was some, prophet or time traveler or anything like that. I fully admit it could be just random probability, but if it is random probability, it's pretty much hit the trifecta on some of the things that it's got in there for the size of it and the specific information. It's just, like I said, I kind of treat it as an interesting puzzle. It's like, I don't know why they're there, but it's fascinating that they are.
It is. It's strange. And are you finding the clusters like within a couple of pages of each other?
Yeah. Well, basically what you want to do is kind of grid them off.
Right.
And by that, what I mean is you form a matrix of your letters. So imagine if I take the entire text of a novel, I take out all the spaces, all the punctuation, and I just,
that's
throw
what
it
it
together
looks like.
in one string of text.
Right.
And as you can see here, what we got pulled up here, this is probably like, what is this? This is like a 30 by 30 matrix. So it's 30 letters across, 30 letters down.
So does that represent, because it's hard to tell with like the punctuation and stuff taken out. I mean, to me, that looks like maybe half a page of text in the book if you're reading it in the book.
Yeah. So they're very close together. It's usually within a paragraph of each other.
In a paragraph?
These things. Yeah.
Right.
Depends on how large you make your matrix.
Right.
So it could be bigger, it could be smaller.
So what size is this? Is it 20 by 20 or something, did you say?
This was probably about 30 by 30. Most of the ones I tried to do were 30 by 30 because I find that 30 by 30 is a good number to go with because it kind of takes away the probability of just randomness and tightens it up. I mean, I could go huge and go, 500 by 500 and find all kinds of interesting things, but then it's more of a, probability-wise, I'm going to find something. Yeah,
it's less exceptional. You're trying to find the most exceptional examples you can.
So most of the things in my book are either 30 by 30 or 50 by 50.
Right.
I go a little bit bigger. I try to stay under 100 by 100. I think once you get over 100 by 100, then you're just, you're going to find whatever you search for. You're going to find it. But some of the things that are in there are just insane to me.
So what have we got on this one? What have we got on this one?
Well, this one we got here. What do we got here? Let me zoom in here.
Oh, you're on a phone, aren't you? Sorry.
There we go. COVID-19. So this one, this one's interesting. Right there in the middle where the green is. Starting with a C and going up, you see that it says COVID.
Yeah.
And then right next to it, you see XIX, and that's the Roman numeral for 19. And up at the top in the red, you see it there, it says election of the president.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting. Now, election of the president is actually, you're not skipping any letters in that. That's actually taken from the text itself. So what I'm doing is kind of mixing the two. This is from the novel 1900 or The Last President. It's Ingersoll Lockwood's last novel he wrote,
right.
Which is also an interesting book that has parallels to 2020. It's basically what it's about. It's about a bunch of socialists and anarchists that ride in the streets after a president becomes elected that's not very popular, a president from New York.
All right. That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I'm
not very popular.
I was just wondering is if, when he was writing these novels, have you ever looked into sort of what was going on in society at that time? Because is this not like the rise of like the first sort of, what's the term, I suppose? I was going to say sort of oligarchs and things, but millionaires and Rockefeller and all that at the turn of the century and stuff. It
was, yeah. And the progressive movement in America was just taking off too. In that area, it was kind of gathering its steam at that point. And, it's very similar today. There's a big divide of which way do you want the country to go? Do we want to, stay traditional this way, or do we want to become more, I don't know what you call it, socialist or whatever, but there was a big movement for progressive movement back in that time that was getting started. And he was kind of trying to capture that, particularly in The Last President, that Albee wrote there. The children's books, not so much. I don't think he tried to have any like parallels or anything like that. To society when he wrote the children's books, because they're pretty, like I said, they're just pretty silly and
so
fantastical.
The Last President wasn't a children's book. Was that more of like a social commentary, or was it a novel? Or
yeah, it was a novel that he wrote towards the adult audience. Sort of, he was very much trying to show parallels of the time he was living in with that particular book.
Right.
And he was basically trying to, it's kind of like an Upton Sinclair kind of thing. Upton Sinclair came later, but he was trying to be like a social justice warrior in his fiction with that particular book. Not very successfully. It didn't take off or anything like that. It's basically kind of it kind of reads as a kind of a whiny manifesto to me. But it's interesting that the parallels of that particular president character in the novel has so many parallels to Trump too. Just the fact that he's from New York.
Yeah.
What's he not very popular. He's very outspoken and rude, and people hate him or love him. There's no in between. And then lots of violence in the streets and threats of overturning the government, things like that.
What's it called? Just out of curiosity, in that book, The President.
I don't even remember the name. Quite honestly, it's very similar to. It's kind of a ripoff of William Jennings Bryan. It's like very similar to that.
Yeah, just an obscure name, no significance there that you know of.
No, nothing similar like that or anything like that. But yeah, just crazy things.
Do you want to throw up another? Oh, sorry, go on, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, how many books did he write, Lockwood?
He wrote 3 fiction books. He wrote some nonfiction books too. Right. But they weren't, they were more based on like his law practice and things like that. But the novels they wrote were just the 3. The first one was called The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bugler. And he wrote that in 1889. And then he wrote a sequel to it called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey in 1893. And then he wrote The Last President.
No, Nobel Prize for fiction or anything
no, nothing like that. He was like just a step up above the guys that write fan fiction on the internet today.
Well,
just a slightly step above that.
Children's
the guys
books
who work for Disney.
Exactly.
They're a massive thing today, aren't they? Children's books, all the celebs, I don't know if it's like that in the States, but all the reality TV stars and pop stars, they all started writing children's books now for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, they think it's kind of an easy
money
sort of thing to get into. Children are pretty, they're pretty tough audience to grab a hold of. They're not easy to. Their minds wander just as much as ours, if not more. So
if you're already famous, though, you're going to sell some books. I think they.
Exactly.
The children don't hold the purse strings. That's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
All the wives do.
So
You're going to throw
another one.
Oh.
You go, Phil.
Got another example here.
Yeah, what do we got here? Epstein, the murder. Jeffrey Epstein's in there, which I thought was fascinating.
He was very focused on kind of one point in time with his coding, wasn't he? Really,
he was, yeah. Because I've searched for like things in the past, and it's very much things that are within the last 20 years. Because I've searched for things like JFK and historical events, and they're not really in there. It tends to be things from this time period, 2020.
That's interesting. Because
so he must have passed him by when he was doing his.
I guess I don't know. Or maybe he thought Nostradamus already covered that. So I'll slide into here.
That's an interesting point, that, because if it was just purely statistical variance, you shouldn't see any demarcation in the period of time. You should be able to find Attila the Hun just as often as Jeffrey Epstein. That's weird.
And that's what I found the most fascinating about it.
Yeah, it's strange that so far you've only found stuff that's happened in the last couple of decades. I don't know. That's an interesting point.
And like I said, I've searched for those things too. Like I searched for a lot of World War II stuff, thinking that, basically big historical time points, and thinking like,
Hitler, Stalin.
Yeah, Hitler.
All that sort of stuff. Right.
Osama bin Laden, 9/11, like, the big turning points in history. And it for whatever reason, there's just much more clustering and things here. But Epstein's, first of all, the fact that the name Epstein is even in this book that was written in the 1800s is, out of this world to me to begin with. But so right there in the middle, you see Epstein going down, which is how that one's formed.
Right.
And in the green. Yeah. And then, over in the corner right here, you see the murder of.
Yeah. So that's from the original text there.
Correct. Yeah. And then what I found interesting was here is over there, you see Sell, SELL. And how you're getting those, I know it kind of looks, when you're having a grid formation, it kind of looks like, well, this just looks like you're circling random letters. What's going on here?
Right.
Basically, if you start at that C right there, and you go up 2 over 1, you get to the E. Up 2 over 1, you get to the L. Up 2 over 1. And that's the pattern you're following. That's the equal distance between the letters. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. When you actually string out the text, and it's not in a grid, it's much easier to see it in a grid formation like this, and to kind of find information. But when it's actually just one string of text, you're still just skipping letters. Like in this case, I think it's skipping every 20 or 30 or something like that.
So it's still an ELS. You're still skipping. Yeah, you're doing the same skip each time.
You're still skipping the same amount of, a certain amount of letters in each one. Just when you have it a grid, they kind of get stepped sometimes. So it just looks like you're, randomly circling letters, but you're not. But it's just easier to see. You wouldn't be able to see all this. It was just one giant sentence. And I was like, okay, count every 20 letters. Now count every 10 letters. Now count every... You wouldn't be able to see it, and you wouldn't be able to really connect it with what's going on in the book right there. So that's why it kind of sometimes they get a little weird. But so we got Epstein, the murder of, Sell, and then in the orange there, hang. Now that's the supposed story of what happened to him. He, hung himself in his cell, quote unquote. And then right across the murder of, you see cop, C-O-P, which in and of itself isn't that big of a word. It's only 3 letters. So, by itself, that's not that impressive. But just the clustering of having it very close to the murder of, and within Epstein and Sell and hang. And, there's this theory that his cellmate was a former police officer who, is basically awaiting trial for triple homicide. Big, giant looking dude. If you never seen a picture of this cop, he looks like a professional wrestler or something. And one of the theories is that, this cop actually murdered Epstein, which makes a lot more sense to me personally than he hung himself.
And I saw in one of your videos, you showed the picture of his cell after the murder.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're going to kill yourself, are you really going to, toss your cell around like there was a struggle first? I don't think I would go through that trouble.
Yeah, the room's absolutely trashed, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, you can clearly see there was some kind of struggle, and there's blood in different locations, and it makes no sense. The fact that the cameras that, you know, were pointing at the cell at the time just happened to be malfunctioning. The fact that the police officers that were on duty that were supposed to be checking on him every 15 minutes basically forged the logs over 300 times and didn't check on him for more than 8 hours.
15 minutes? They were supposed to check on him every 15 minutes?
Yeah, because he was on suicide watch.
Right.
You know, they say he was taken off. He actually wasn't, if you actually read it. He was on suicide watch. And they were supposed to check on him every 15 minutes. They didn't. There's actually video of the two police officers, because those cameras that were in the control room where the guards hang out, those were working. And recent court filings have shown that those cops were just hanging out in there watching TV, goofing off, forging the logs over 300 times. They forged it, saying they checked on them when they didn't. And they've actually, there's been a couple of indictments coming on those two recently for forging those logs, because that's, you know, against the law. But just, I don't know, just the fact that you have Epstein, the murder of cop, cell hangs, all in this small cluster together.
Yeah.
I mean, the word Epstein alone, you know, is...
Why is that? Why do you find that so significant?
Because it's just such a... It's not very popular... you know, some words are going to be easier to find than others because they're small and they're like, you know, the word cop, or, you know, it's common. Right. You know, Epstein's not a very common name. It's a larger word. You know, the larger the words get, the harder they are to find.
Right. Yeah.
You know, in this particular case, Epstein was found by skipping every, I believe it's every 75 letters, something like that.
Right.
I don't know if it's on this one, but
with this, I noticed you've gone for 41. Horizontal, and the other one, the previous one was 30. This wouldn't work if you'd gone with 30 previously, right? Because these would be scattered differently.
Correct. Yeah. So depending on this original matrix was a 50 by 50. I zoomed in when I cut it to the interesting information. So this one originally was a 50 by 50 matrix, and I basically cropped it to make it easier to see and read.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, some of them are going to be cropped and you're not going to see the exact amount. But Epstein, a lot of the Epstein stuff tends to be in 50 by 50 matrices, mostly probably because his name is longer. So sometimes the bigger the word you're looking for, the bigger the matrix you got to go with as well. But otherwise it's not going to line up.
So does the matrix affect the ELS then?
It can. It depends. It's kind of confusing. The maths in it is interesting. Not necessarily from a skip point of view.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
It won't. Like I said, if you just imagine if I take the whole novel and I just make one giant sentence stretched out, you know, to however long it takes, you're still going to have the same amount of letters that are being skipped. Yeah. The only thing it changes is the visual output of what the matrix looks like.
So when you use the software, does that examine the entire text as a whole, regardless of what matrix you then choose to view it in?
Correct. Yeah, it does.
Right.
And then you can ask for it to... The software I use is called Skip Code. It's free. You go on my website, lockwoodcode.com. You can download it and try all this yourself. I have all the codes on there. You can download them.
Cool.
And I have the texts that are formatted. And I encourage people to do it. I think the more people that do it, the more interesting things you'll find. But so what this software basically does is it just kind of speeds up the process. What it does is you tell it, okay, here's my text file, and it's going to remove all the spaces and all the punctuation from it and everything like that. And I tell it, okay, I want to search for Epstein. So I type in Epstein, and it's going to search through the entire document that you've uploaded, and it's going to basically start, you know, skipping letters one by one and till it finds, you know, cases of Epstein. Mm-hmm. And I think in this case it only found 2. Weren't that many. And and then it forms the matrix for you. I tell it, okay, I want it to be a 30 by 30 matrix, or I want it to be a 50 by 50 matrix, and it'll form it for you. And it'll actually put that word in the middle of the matrix for you, just for visual purposes. So that's why it has Epstein going up and down in the middle there. And then you can search within that matrix for things. And that's when it gets interesting to me. Not necessarily that you can find Epstein. That, okay, what else is around Epstein in this particular matrix around this particular form of text that makes this interesting? And so within that matrix, it's like, okay, what do we got? And then I just started searching for keywords that, surround Epstein. I was like, okay, well, he hung himself. Is hanging there? Yep. Where did he hang himself? In jail. Is jail in there? No. Prison? No. Cell? Yeah, there's cell. Kind of a small word, but it is close to hang. Yeah. So it might be relevant. And it's just kind of this trial and error that you go through trying to find things. And you just, spend hours and hours kind of going down this rabbit hole, seeing if you can find things. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Did you try searching for Lolita Express in that cell?
No, I didn't, actually. Oh. I should try.
Probably a bit of a big one, that.
Yeah. I would be surprised if it was in there. At this point, I wouldn't.
Wow.
But, and then sometimes it's not necessarily the visual matrices and the words that are close to it that are interesting, but sometimes it's the amount of words that are skipped that are interesting.
Oh, right. So the actual cipher itself, the skip count.
Yeah, like, for example, there's a Barack Obama one where if you take the text of the first Lockwood novel, The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump, right? And if you skip every, this is kind of silly, but it's funny, 1,961 letters, which sounds random, it spells out Obama, right? And you're like, okay, whatever. Well, he was born in 1961. So 1961. I was like, okay, well, that's interesting.
That's weird.
Within that matrix, though, it also crossing rightly across from Obama, it says born. So the matrix that creates using his birthday says Obama born.
Oh, oh my God.
So that's when it gets really crazy. It's like, okay, that's so sometimes it's that stuff that kind of ties it together and makes it weird.
Is that this one? I'm not sure it's this one.
It might be this. There's actually a lot of Obama. I guess Lockwood was like one of the birther conspiracy guys or something. Because for whatever reason, whenever you search Barack Obama or Obama, birth and born are always right around it. And, that was kind of Trump's sort of entrance into the political world. He was the big birther guy. He was, when Obama was president, he was this guy wasn't born in America, show your birth certificate.
Oh, right, okay.
He's a secret Muslim from Kenya. And I found so many Obama birth Kenyan Muslim connections. And I'm not saying I believe any of those things. Let me get that straight right away. But for whatever reason, they're in there. Now, this one in particular, we got, so this is one that I thought was interesting. So it says Obama, and then it says Trump, up there. And then this is a good example of what I'll consistently find is I'll find information about him having to prove his birth. Like you'll have proof, liar, born, USA. For whatever reason, I guess Lockwood was a birther because he doesn't believe Barack Obama was born in the United States of America for whatever reason. There's also another one that talks about Kenya and Muslim and Obama. And to be fair, Barack Obama's father, Barack Obama Sr., he was a Muslim that was born in Kenya.
Yeah.
So is it possible Lockwood's talking about those guys? I don't know. Maybe. So it could be that. Could be random. But for whatever reason, Obama and birth connections are heavily in there. I found hundreds of them in all three of the novels for whatever reason.
Oh, what's this? What's the legend? Oh, the legend. That's sort of the cipher that's been used, is it?
Yeah. Kind of as an example of what's going on here. Because some of them do get really interesting and confusing. This is one of the first ones I found, actually. So you have Obama, Trump, birth, lies, liar, ISIS,
Christian war.
Christian war.
Christian war. Yeah, Christian War, East and Mid. Yeah, there's a lot of ISIS stuff and Middle Eastern war stuff that's in it as well. Baghdadi is in there. The leader of ISIS that we assassinated is in there a couple times, which just that particular word in general, the fact that was, when I searched for that, I was like, okay, you're not going to find this. That's a huge
ISIS
word. Well. Yeah. And I found that in there as well. And it just fascinating. But as you can see, like some of them are quite big, and that's kind of where the controversy comes in it. So where it says offset 60, that's where you're starting at in the text. That's the 60th letter is where you're starting at.
Right.
And then you're skipping every 1,409 letters to get Obama. And so that's basically what this is. It's telling you the legend and the key, which, like I said, in itself, those are huge skip numbers and by themselves don't mean anything. But where it gets interesting to me is like, okay, when they cluster all together like that in this, form in this matrix, that's when it gets interesting to me. Not the fact that you could find these words in the text, that's not difficult at all. But when they come together to form this matrix, it's like, wow.
I'm really disappointed that I can't find more rude words in these word searches. I've been looking for them. It's difficult.
It is difficult. I've just found sexperiment.
Oh, yeah.
Right in the middle. Slap bang in the middle, next to the second I in ISIS, starting after the second I. Sexperiment.
Yeah, so it almost says, crazy word search, adult word search.
It almost says sexperiment with but it's the wrong way around.
You got to change your offset.
Yeah.
You will find interesting things like that. And some of them I found, there are some dirty words in there. Right next to Trump, I found toilet a couple times, which I thought was interesting because he had a gold toilet. That's kind of what Trump was known for. He had a gold toilet.
That was what he was known for before he became the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah, that was the thing. The guy got funny hair in the gold toilet.
Yeah.
Where he became the leader of the free world.
Yeah. CJ, were you into puzzles as a kid? Did you used to like doing word searches and crosswords and stuff?
I did, yeah. I was into Sudoku before it became a thing, and I liked word searches, and I was really into codes. I liked ciphers and codes and things like that as a kid. I think all little boys kind of go through that phase.
Well, they used skip codes in the Cold War, didn't they? With and World War II as spy codes.
Yeah, I mean,
I suppose Enigma was more of a not skip code, but it was cipher use and things.
Yeah, based on similar principles. I mean, skip codes were basically the earliest form of encryption. It's not a very advanced form of encryption, but it is a form of encryption. It's still used today in certain sections. But the more complicated and advanced it got, the less interested I got. I'm not very good at math. So when I became a teenager, it kind of was like, okay, now it's not so much fun because it's all about math and numbers and things like that. That doesn't really interest me. But I think every little boy kind of goes through that phase where they like to write secret messages and codes and invisible ink and all that.
Spy pens.
Yeah.
We'd write something with a spy pen, and then did you have to shine a ultraviolet light on it or something? I can't remember.
It's lemon juice, and then you have to put it in the oven for a bit, and it browns the lemon juice, and you can read the message.
Yeah, I did that as a kid. Yeah, I had a cool book when I was a kid about basically all that cool spy stuff you could do, and it was always super fun. But I was never really interested. I did another podcast where the guy was really into the math aspect of it, and I was like, I can't help you there, buddy. I don't understand the math. First of all, I don't even understand why this stuff's in here to begin with, but I really don't understand most of the math involved in it at all, either. He was more knowledgeable about it than me.
I was going to say, what would you like? I suppose, what would you like the answer to be as to why these things are in there? You kind of said that.
Yeah, I kind of like the mystery of it, There's been, I kind of kicked around the idea of, Elon Musk has been kicking around this idea that we're all living in a simulation, And it's interesting to think about that. I don't necessarily believe it, but it's interesting to think about it. And it kind of comes to this question of, well, is, maybe art and music and literature maybe that's all a part of the source code that's makes up this, holographic universe we supposedly live in, if you want to go out on a crazy limb.
Yeah,
maybe
if you start looking into more esoteric subjects and sacred geometry, and you start learning about the role that things like ratio and number and geometry play in things like music and art and biology, it makes you wonder. It almost sort of hints towards a design of some sort, and that doesn't have to be the grand design, or the big G. That could be simulation theory. And like you're saying, that's the source code. This harmony, ratio, number is the source code of the universe. And
yeah, it could be. And then if anybody's ever did any computer coding, you do kind of hide your notes in the code itself when you're making things,
right.
As reminders and jots and to save space.
Is that what your background is? Is it in coding computers?
No, not at all. I studied a little bit, but quickly discovered that I don't have the brain or the aptitude for it or the patience for it. It drove me crazy. But I studied it. I did a little bit of coding, nothing crazy. I fooled around with Python and things like that.
Right.
But there's that theory. And then I think Carl Jung might have touched upon it too with his theory of the collective unconscious. The more we learn about, space and time and quantum theory and things like that, time becomes less of a linear thing and more of we're kind of all there together. And maybe the collective unconscious isn't necessarily kind of what I think Jung might have touched upon the idea of it. Maybe it's less of a shared memory and more of a shared sort of time experience.
Yeah.
That we have encoded in us. I don't know. If I was going to come up with a theory of why, I kind of lean towards that stuff only because it's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
I don't really think it's divine intervention. I don't think it's,
if
that he was a time traveler or anything like that.
You speak to anyone who's experimented with DMT or ayahuasca or some other psychedelics, they'll give you a similar sort of response about, when it comes to the nature of reality, that, we're limited to the visual, very limited in the visual spectrum of what we can sort of see, and that maybe there is other stuff going on that we're just unaware of.
Yeah, to me that makes the most sense. I did acid once, and man, I will never do it again. It scared the crap out of me. Yeah, I did it once when I was pretty young. I was like 13 years old when I did it, which is probably stupid.
That's too young. Somebody doing acid at 13.
Yeah, too young.
Yeah.
And I kind of have this fear of going crazy. I kind of have this like irrational fear of one day going crazy anyway. So it's probably not a good idea for me to do that. But like schizophrenia runs in my family and things like that. So I always had this like, one of these days it's going to just hit me. I've kind of gotten past the age now though. They say if it doesn't hit you within like your 20s, you're safe.
All right.
I think I'm good. But back then, I kind of had this irrational fear in the back of my mind that one day I was going to go crazy. So probably taking a, psychedelic drug wasn't a good idea. But my hallucinations, they were more auditory than visual when I took it. But I am fascinated by like DMT and the new, there's sort of this new sort of, I don't know what you would call it, sort of study and enlightenment about it that's been going on that I think is good. And I think it has legit purpose and study. I'm just saying for me personally, I won't do it again. Just doesn't make me.
Matt, didn't you find a story from this week regarding DMT?
I don't remember. No, I don't think so.
I thought you posted it in the group.
Might have been me.
Was it?
Yeah, they're using it. They're looking into using it for treatments for disorders.
PTSD.
They're looking at a lot of psychedelics for that sort of treatment of
they're really experimenting a lot with it for like depression and mental illnesses and things like that. And it is interesting that a lot of the people that take those substances have very, very similar experiences. Like if you take, in these controlled studies, if you take a group of people that don't communicate or talk to each other, and then, you give them this substance. It's interesting to think about how, because, brain chemistry, even though, we're all very similar, but we're all very, very different as far as our brain chemistry goes too. It's a strange sort of roll of the dice that we get. So it's interesting that how they all have this kind of shared experience of we're all one. That's a big one that comes up. We're all one. Mm. We're all
universal
together. We're all
consciousness
connected. Yeah, and it's very much part of that whole collective unconscious thing. It's like, well, maybe there is something to that.
It's
or maybe they're just really screwed up.
Something that goes back thousands of years as well. And it's only in very recent history that this stuff has been, since the war on drugs, essentially, that this stuff has gone underground. I mean, I probably talk about it every week, but if you go back to ancient Greece and the Eleusinian mysteries, and, they were getting high on psychedelics. And, you can argue that the first sacrament, the first Christian sacrament was also a related psychedelic. This stuff is a common thing throughout our history, which sort of an initiation and a way of enhancing your consciousness, which we've decided now you're not allowed to tamper with your own consciousness or put what you want in your body anymore. Yeah,
it's strange. There's interesting information too about it. Have you heard of the stoned ape theory?
Yeah, Terence McKenna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You read that, it makes sense, because why are we as humans, we don't make a lot of sense as far as why we're the dominant species on this planet. Why haven't dolphins become, just as, they're just as intelligent, but why didn't they become as dominant as us or other forms of apes or, any other species, insects or something like that. We're born pretty much useless. If we don't, we can't walk right out of the womb like animals can. We can't fend for ourselves at all. Somehow we lost all our hair, but we also wouldn't have survived if we didn't kill animals and wear their hair. It's just, we don't make, why did we become the dominant species? It doesn't make any sense. We're weak. Evolutionary standpoint, we don't make sense.
It's interesting to ponder why we became the dominant hominid, never mind species, because, we had Neanderthal, Denisovans, multiple others. Why us, I guess, would the anthropologists put it down to it can't be the opposable thumb, because, the Neanderthals had tools, they had jewelry, they could manipulate their environment just as well as we could. So, what is it?
I think that's where the stoned ape theory comes in, is somewhere our specific branch of the species maybe experimented with, these psychedelic things that triggered this thing in our brains that made it develop faster and made us understand something that those other hominids didn't. And I think that's our consciousness, that we became aware of our own existence. Animals are aware of their existence, but it's more of an instinctual level. They can't really think about these abstract concepts like death and life and, the linearness of time and things like that. So this idea that, maybe, these psychedelic things that triggered the DMT that's naturally within us has sort of accelerated this thing, because we wouldn't have survived without our brains. That's the only thing that really kept us alive. We would have froze to death because we lost all our hair if we didn't think, hey, if I kill that thing and wear its hair, I'm not going to be as cold, and that goes beyond an instinctual type of intelligence, an animal instinctual intelligence. It's more of an abstract intelligence. One
of the things
to ponder that.
I was just thinking then, when you're talking about sort of the DMT and psychedelics and stuff, one of the things I've read about that's supposed to, one of the theories is that Neanderthals certainly didn't, I read something in a textbook where they looked at sort of the cranium and the prefrontal cortex, and they sort of hypothesized a lack of something called theory of mind. Have you ever heard of that? So you're in, your ability to think like another person. So, recognize, empathize, and predict what they're going to do and not do based on your actions and stuff. But then you can empathizing. You can kind of link that into the psychedelics and stuff as you were talking. Then, it would make you potentially more empathetic to to do that.
Absolutely. And I think it kind of becomes the difference between like a beginning chess player and an advanced chess player. Like, when you first learn how to play chess as a kid, you're lucky if you can think 1 or 2 moves ahead. I'm still that way now if I try to play chess. You can think of that as, an animal level of extinction, or not extinction, but instinct. They have these, they can think sort of like, if I swat at this guy and he ducks, then, I can do this. It's very instinctual. Whereas if you got to think down the road, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 moves ahead, you're at a different level. So it kind of, it makes sense, it's interesting, but
yeah, it goes back to the concept of time and causality as well, to be able to conceptualize what will happen if I do X, Y, and Z 7 or 8, 10 moves ahead. That necessitates. I don't know if that's a word, but it's necessary to have a concept of causality and consequence and time. Whereas, like you say, most animals are very instinctual and they want immediate reward. And you can't train a dog like you can train a baby.
You could.
Well, you could, but there's a limit. There's a biological limit there, I think. There
is, yeah. I mean, we don't have claws. We don't have, we lost our canine teeth, most of us. Yeah. And, we needed that mind to become the dominant species and to survive, Yeah. Without it, we wouldn't have. We have nothing when we're born, We don't have claws. We don't have fur. We don't have teeth. The idea that we're the dominant species, it's almost laughable,
And as you alluded to before, like all humans are born premature. That's why we can't, like the gazelle when it's born, it has to be on its feet and running instantly. Otherwise, it'll be prey. It'll turn into prey. Whereas humans are born immature, I believe, because of the size of the cranium getting down the birth canal. And that's why, that's the theory anyway. And that's why we're so helpless when we first start out in life.
It's crazy. And then you get the whole ancient alien theories of, maybe we're designed from something else, whether you want to call it God or aliens or what, but it's just crazy to think about, like why we are how we are and how we got here. And if it is all connected, and if it is a simulation, it's kind of a stupid one.
They're having a right laugh at us, aren't they?
Doesn't really make. It's kind of a boring simulation, The simulations I watch. You want to be a little more interesting. But
well, this is something we come back to quite regularly, isn't it, on the podcast? Sort of the anthropology, and what's so special about humans and the nature of consciousness and all this stuff. And it's really interesting. I didn't even consider the simulation theory angle when I was looking at your videos and whatnot, but it certainly puts an interesting spin on it for me.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like I said, if I was going to try to come up with a theory,
rationalize it, because that's something we do as humans, isn't it? We try and rationalize things immediately.
Yeah, we do. And that's probably one of our biggest, it could be our biggest flaw, and it could be our biggest asset too, depending on who's doing the rationalizations and things like that too.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that I come up with, but I don't know why they're there. They're there and they're interesting, but why? Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Yeah. Unless you boys have anything to add, particularly?
No, I think that was perfect.
No, you're right. It's weird and interesting.
Yeah, definitely weird.
Very weird. Very weird. Like I said, check out the YouTube channel. It's got some stuff on there. The book's available on Amazon. Actually sold quite a bit in the UK. You guys are into this kind of stuff. Not sure why.
Yeah, if you scroll down, if you scroll down to the show notes, you'll find links there to TJ's YouTube channel and the Amazon page. And well, should we put your Instagram on there as well?
Yeah, just throw whatever you want on there. I'm a part of all the social medias and all that stuff.
Cool.
And lots of crazy things in there. This is just, we just touched upon it.
Tip of the iceberg.
Very much tip of the iceberg. Once you get into the the George Floyd and things like that, it gets even weirder. So,
well,
appreciate you having me.
Cool, yeah. Thanks for coming, TJ. It's been nice to meet you.
Cheers, TJ.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you guys too.
All the links will be in the description. Just hang on the line for us for 1 minute while we play ourselves out, and
all right,
we'll catch you on the flip side. Don't touch that dial.
No.
All right, we're back.
The dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness.
That's our chat.
I think we need a new ident for you, Phil.
Why?
Because you can't be the mother of madness with a beard.
Nah.
You've never heard of the bearded lady?
Yeah, I know, but can't say that anymore.
I'm thinking I might try and be an extra on Vikings. Now I've had my ears lowered. I've had my head shaved.
Yeah. It looks, I think it looked quite impressive, actually. It makes your beard pop.
I've got the range for it, I think. So you're Ragnar Lothbrok. I thought you'd be bigger.
That's quite good.
Yeah, I could do that.
Is that Al Pacino?
Sense of a Viking.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That was our chat with TJ Branham, author of the Lockwood Code. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. We didn't ask him if he was going to do any more books or if he's done any more books, did we?
No, we should have done.
No.
Hey, the time goes that quick, you know. You've only so much time, and I thought it went into interesting places, you know,
yes.
into anthropology and simulation theory and stuff. So I think it was very interesting. Do check out his YouTube channel. There's some nice, really nice short videos just to sort of give you a flavour of what he's looking into. Yes. And, you know, if it piques your interest, go and buy the book. Follow the Amazon link and check the book out. So, yeah, thanks for coming, TJ. It was good. All right. Should we do some housekeeping?
Housekeeping.
I'm a bit slow on the uptake tonight.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
I'm a blind man. Become a producer and support the show. How do I become a producer of the show and support the show? I hear you cry. Send us some iTunes. Go on.
That was me crying.
First thing, iTunes reviews. iTunes reviews.
We got one.
Oh, have we? What have we got this week?
Don't know you sent it. I think it might be from an Irish listener.
Oh, right.
We read these out still, don't we?
Is it in Gaelic?
No.
No? Is it written by someone who sounds inebriated?
It's DJ _Pistol _Pete.
Okay.
So DJ Pistol Pete. It says, it's great crack.
Yeah, but he says it's great. Does he say crack as in crack, the Irish crack, or the?
No, it's not spelled like. It's spelled like crack. Yeah, or the drug. It's great crack and banter and stuff. Pretty dope crack, I must say! Exclamation mark.
Pretty dope crack.
Good.
Thanks, DJ Pistol Pete.
Yeah, appreciate him.
You become a producer of episode 163. Congratulations.
Well done.
Slap it on your LinkedIn.
Yes.
How else can you become a producer? Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tonight's episode would be a good one for YouTube, so you can have a look at the grids.
Yeah. Yes. What did he call them? Matrices.
Matrices.
Yeah, so go to YouTube if you want to see how the sausage is made. Buy some merch from the Amish loot chest.
Yeah.
Get your put on your fucking muzzle face mask, or you're literally a communist mug.
Have you sold any face masks yet?
Yeah, millions. They're the hottest mass that money can buy.
This side of Christendom.
And the good news is that all proceeds from the loot chest are going to St. Catherine's Hospice for the month of December. So
yeah,
it's a worthy cause. Buy some loot.
Yeah.
Link in the description. You can email us at theamisinquisition@gmail.com. Stalk us on social media. Tell your friends. Send us news clips, videos, memes for Instagram, death threats. How else can you become a producer?
Send us nudes.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil, that and it really bothers me. Because
tosses a coin. Go to the armishinquisition.com, find the PayPal button, and give us a one-off. Sign up for a monthly. You know, it's a couple of quid. Crikey, if everyone did a couple of quid a month, we'd, you know...
Have 4 quid.
It won't be rich, but it might...
pay for servers and things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe me, Amish Matt and Amish Ben should start paying £2 a month.
Okay. Well, I better thank the producers, Anna, for episode 163. Some new names on the list this week.
Yeah.
We have DJ Pistol Pete, Nomae NosNoj, Full Metal Keto as Fuck, Sunny One Funny Farm, Aliens and Pyramids and Shit, BabyKukla, Arj, Tamborista 2020, and Amish Matt.
Yes!
Oh, you made it.
163 episodes in.
In the big leagues. With the producers.
Thanks for your support.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Amish Matt, you're so amazing in your love.
I know.
They are.
Yeah.
So amazing in their love.
I've been coming to terms with the fact that I am
Fucking vegan.
Because I'm literally
the best mate.
To crush your enemies.
The dwarf. The
currant.
The
grape.
The
homophobe.
The winds.
The
asthma.
The
crop up. Cunt.
The number 11.
The
blind man.
The
fallen on the horizon.
The cripple and the mother of...
An old friend is here.
From hell.
Oh, no.
Delightful!
Don't get it, never will.
Yes! Guardians are measured by their ability to come.
See them driven before you and hear the lamentations of the women.
What's my favorite gun? Flaming cum!
Yeah, thanks for your support for another week.
Ooh, what's going on in the background with the synths there?
The thank you jingle is getting longer and longer and longer each week. And, we're getting some hot synth action in the background now.
We're going into space.
Yeah, simulation theory. Oh God, you got to love a bit of Lord Shaxo, haven't you?
Guardians are measured by their ability to come.
Okay, moving on.
Oh dear.
COVID-19 news.
Put on your fucking muzzle if you go to the shop.
The magic vaccine.
A big fat shot in the ass.
From hell.
Oh! You know, it's just, super painful.
Like a judgment day and terminating mode, like.
More lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
2 million people have to die.
This is such a crock of shit.
This is Smelly Pickering!
Who the fuck's that?
Yeah, me!
Got a fuck ton of COVID news this week. Let's start with the pop-up YouTube channel, Unheard, fronted by Freddie Sayers. And this week he did an interview with a chap called David Engelthaler. Is the co-director of the T-Gen Research Institute and former state epidemiologist for Arizona. And this guy's been looking at the virus from like a genomic level. And he's sort of breaking down the genetic sequencing and stuff. And he was talking about mutations. And it seems that from his evidence, there has been a significant mutation early on. And his evidence suggests that China and Southeast Asia had the original strain, and that also migrated west to California. but they've picked up a second strain in Northern Europe and the East Coast of America, which got hit really hard. New York has the highest death rate per capita in the world. So it seems that it's not more deadly, this different strain, but it causes more upper respiratory infections and therefore is transmitting quicker. And this could be part of the explanation why, Southeast Asia got off relatively lightly compared to, say, Northern Europe or Southern Europe, for that matter, Italy, Spain, Belgium and whatnot. So I've got a few clips, and he's a proper mainstream guy. He's pro-mask, pro-social distancing. He's not, a swivel-eyed loon like me. So, but the first clip is about shutting down schools, which I found was interesting.
Is a valid, it's a valid point based off of the evidence that we have now that we're actually maybe dealing with a virus that we couldn't have completely. Sorry,
shooting down schools is next. He's talking about the mutation and how it affected our response.
Completely got our arms around with a variety of mitigation strategies, and maybe at least here's in my viewpoint is that much more effort should have been around focusing on preventing deaths in the people that we knew were going to die because they still died, which to me is the biggest tragedy in all of this. I think the vast majority of those deaths could have been prevented if the focus would have been on protecting them rather than on trying to prevent any spread of this virus, which I pretty much don't think is containable.
So he's suggesting that, it sounds like he's got a sort of similar view to the Great Barrington Declaration, in that you should be focusing your resources on the people who are most vulnerable, and that you can't contain it. That the strain that we got over here, zero COVID, was never going to be an option. So I thought that was interesting.
Is that what we're still going for? Zero COVID? Are we not accepting the fact that it's endemic in the population now, like flu or whatever? It's just going to come every year.
Well, that doesn't seem. It seems that suppression, ultimately suppression until the vaccine, and then vaccinate everyone. I mean, that's zero COVID, isn't it? We're not trying to live with it.
Oh God! Right.
Doesn't seem to be. That doesn't seem to be the strategy.
I think that's possible, is it?
Well, let's go on to shutting down the schools.
Publicly, I'm probably a bit of an outlier. Privately, behind closed doors, there's definitely been a lot of discussion from the very beginning that there's no scientific evidence that shutting down schools actually helps to stop a pandemic. And that is even for things where kids can transmit the virus effectively. They don't transmit this virus very effectively. They don't transmit it between each other. They don't typically get very sick from it. And it'd be harder for them to transmit it to adults. It does happen for sure. But epidemiologists know that. They knew that from the beginning, but that was not a popular opinion to take.
Not a popular opinion? I thought they were scientists.
Publicly and seems to have been kind of left to the aside, and we shut down all the schools. I don't think that was a good thing.
We're supposed to be relying on these guys. These are the experts, the epidemiologists. And he's saying that behind closed doors, they all knew that this was the wrong thing to do. But they let it happen anyway.
Reluctant, I think. But I think...
what are you there for?
That's what I remember. I remember them saying, at the beginning of it all, why they're not kind of closing schools. And I remember Bojo answering in a conference, news conference, saying that it doesn't make much difference closing the schools. But that's what he'd been told at that time. And that was months ago, before they closed them.
Where do you think the pressure's coming from? Pressure came from to close the schools?
It's just I think it's what Marlon said. Like, you're copying what everyone else is doing. That's what it is. It becomes a pressure in itself, because if you don't do what everybody else is doing and people die, they will say, well, nobody would have died if you closed schools. Nobody would have died if you had done a full lockdown.
And then when you do it, they say, well, if you'd have done it 2 weeks earlier.
Exactly, yeah. But it's starting to make more sense, isn't it, now? Well, this is the thing, is other people don't seem to listen to certain things that we do, though, I suppose, do they? In that,
this is why this podcast is valuable, and you should return some value, because you won't hear the shit on the BBC or Channel 4 News.
It's looking like it's making more sense, isn't it, to let this virus go through everybody that is not likely to die from it, in order to make it less likely that it's passed on to people who are more vulnerable.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, unfortunately.
No,
but
it's not going to happen.
We can still talk about it and hope.
Well, we're all going to get vaccinated, or if you choose to have the vaccine, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? It's the same thing. Let's
move on. He goes on to talk about how, speaking of the vaccines, he goes on to talk about how mutations might affect long-term immunity and therefore efficacy of vaccines. This is clip 2. Oh, no, 3.
What we've learned so far is that people's immune response, at least the antibody response, lasts for at least 6 months. And that's only because the studies have only gone on that long. So we do think there's some amount of time, and it may be a year, maybe a couple years, but I do think a repeated jab is going to be necessary, and that might be on an annual basis.
This is kind of significant, isn't it, though? Because at the moment, the vaccination is talked about as the end of the story. Hooray, the vaccine has arrived.
The magic vaccine, hooray.
Just stay shut down, hold your breath, we'll get there in the spring, you'll have your jab, and then we'll be okay. But really what we're saying to people is, this is the beginning of a kind of lifelong struggle against this particular virus. Everyone is now going to be signed up for sort of periodic vaccinations until they die. And potentially the virus will then be mutating, so they'll need different kinds of vaccines to deal with new strains as and when they arrive. So it's really the beginning of a new chapter rather than the end of the story.
Yeah, I think...
And this is where Ivor Cummins' cost-benefit analysis comes in really handy. The amount of money we're going to be spending on doing this every year, if it's mutating, when we could be spending that on cancer research, general public health. Cardiovascular disease kills fucking hundreds of % more people than this does. I know I'm not undermining or belittling people who've died with COVID or of COVID, but you sort of have to be dispassionate in a way about when you're making huge public health policy decisions, which is shit, but you've got to do what's for the greater good, or as Malin would say, what causes the least harm. But anyway, he's not finished, I don't think.
That's probably true. Although the first part was absolutely true as well. Yay, the vaccines.
Yay, vaccines. So yeah, he's sort of, because he's been studying the mutations, he's saying probably this is going to be an annual thing. You'll get an annual vaccine.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't it?
It's funny. Most people probably didn't catch it because Patrick Vallance was interviewed on the day the first vaccine was given in this country. And he was saying that masks he expects to be around till next winter. And masks are a substitute for social distancing, aren't they? You wear a mask where you can't social distance. So the implication is that social distancing will be here till next winter, which will end in March 2022. So get used to that.
Well, you would think it would take. How long do you think it's going to take to vaccinate 70 million people?
I don't know. You're quiet, Ben.
The US is saying that they will vaccinate 20 million by the end of this year. So that's only
10%.
15 days or 20 days.
It's not even 10%, that, is it?
No, but it's 20 million people. So 70 million people. I don't know. Probably by the spring this year, I would say. Depends what kind of vaccination drive they do. But they vaccinate God knows how many millions of people every winter for flu vaccine.
The problem is there's an issue with the cold storage and the cold chain.
Yeah.
This isn't
Pfizer one.
Yeah, it'll be quicker once the Oxford thing comes.
Yeah.
The Oxford one comes.
Yeah.
Whenever that happens.
And it depends on take-up as well, I presume. I presume they'll have a record of who's taking it and who isn't.
Yeah, they'll have to. But what happens if only 20% of the people come forward for a vaccine? That's not going to work. So, it's slightly worrying what they would have to do in order to increase that take-up.
Chemtrails.
Presumably, the take-up will be highest in the most at-risk groups, and it will go down on a sliding scale depending on what your risk factor is.
Yeah, you'd think.
Well, if I'm more likely to die in a car crash than of COVID, I'm less likely to take an experimental vaccine with no long-term safety data, aren't I?
But more likely to never cross a road.
But that's the fact, isn't it? So people who are older, who have a lot of comorbidities, I'm sure will be highly likely to take it. And they're the people who are vulnerable.
Think
so, if it's 95% effective.
If, having less sniffles, are you, when you get vaccinated, are you like free then? Like these old people, that 90-year-old guy who got vaccinated said he was going to hug his granddaughters.
No, we've just said social distancing is going to carry on until next winter.
So he can't, even though he's been vaccinated, he can't like go to the shops with, I suppose, you know.
Yeah, you're not vaccinated against the law, mate. I think that's the argument that they would say.
Oh, God damn it. But he's got a card. Have you not seen? That's what I was going to say. You've got your COVID vaccine cards now saying I've been vaccinated.
I've still got my my old H1N1 vaccine card that I had to. That was more a work thing than a national thing. But it'll be the same sort of...
Collector's item, that, isn't it? Because they had to scrap billions of them doses, didn't they? Because no one wanted them anymore.
Not ours. Some other guys.
Last clip from Unheard.
On them.
I think this might be one of those truth wants to come out moments.
Got to say, I'm really happy this pandemic is happening this year. In this day and age, because we are able to use 21st century science and technology to respond to this. And with vaccines being invented, developed, tested, trialed, produced, and delivered all within the same year is completely unheard of and actually ridiculous. Only Hollywood would have come up with that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's Hollywood stuff. It's a Hollywood finish to the pandemic.
Ooh, yeah. Not even a streak.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I mentioned the Fat Emperor, Ivor Cummins, before. He had a bloke on this week, Reed Sheftall, MD.
Ooh, wow, nice.
Reed Sheftall. Just to give you a rundown of who this guy is, he studied physics at MIT. He's an MD. He got 99% in his medical exam and 99% in his surgical exam. And his SAT score was 1580 out of a possible 1600.
Oh,
is he a bit of a nobody then?
Yeah,
that's a lot of questions.
Essentially, smarter than us three put together.
Well,
but
it's not hard.
He just doesn't understand any of this COVID stuff. So it was like an hour and a half, and this was part one. Part two's coming out soon, but they go through the gamut of all the usual stuff, same sort of stuff we've been covering about inconsistencies, weirdness in the data, put in mandatory masks in when the pandemic is essentially dead. It's hibernating till the next winter season and all this lot. Prior death years impacting countries, all the rest of it. But there are a couple of things I hadn't heard before, so I just took a couple of clips. This is clip 1.
National Institutes of Health. But in 1960, some explorers wanted to spend the winter in Antarctica. And of course, before they left, there were 12 of them. Before they left, they all had extensive history and physical and laboratory investigation for any infectious disease.
Are you hearing this all right? The audio's not great.
Yeah.
So there's an expedition going to Antarctica in 1960, and they've all had a physical. This dozen explorers, anyway.
And for 17 weeks, no problems at all with any of the 12 explorers. And then one guy started getting really bad symptoms of a cold. And within a very short time, 6 of the 12 men had a cold, a bad cold. So, I mean, that's 4 months and 1 week in Antarctica, where it's very cold, and thousands of miles from any other human being. And somehow a virus lasted 4 months and 1 week, or it came in on the wind, probably.
Weird, huh?
Have you not heard these theories around about how the viruses traveled on the wind?
Well, I've heard, yeah. Well, Dr. Chandra Wickramasinghe,
yes,
the guy behind panspermia,
Yes.
he suggests that COVID comes from space and it travels on the jet streams.
His theory is that there's. I try not to laugh. No, he's a very respected researcher. It kind of, I think, like so many thousands, tens of thousands of feet up, there's like a bionosphere, I think he called it, or it's referred to. And up there, there's thousands of undiscovered viruses. And occasionally one comes down and he thinks like it could be COVID or whatever. But one thing that he said on this other podcast I was listening to, Chandra Wickramasinghe, was... yeah, there was there's a story of a boat in, I think, in the 19th century or the 18th century, and it set sail, and it was at sea for like 16 weeks or so, you know, a few months, and then everybody started getting ill with flu on board. So his was that he kind of took that as evidence that something blew in on the wind, like a virus blew on the wind. Someone picked it up and it spread through the boat.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? How does it happen? Does anything spring to mind? What it could have you any ideas, Ben?
Global warming, melting permafrost.
Yeah, that's the other thing, isn't it? All that methane, firing it up into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
I don't know. It raises this question of dormancy, doesn't it? And, you know, seasonality. Why do coronaviruses and other respiratory viruses always start to peak in September and peak up until December, January, and then tail off for the spring? It's strange, isn't it? One theory I like is that it could be weakened immune systems. That we're getting less sun. We're staying indoors more. You know, maybe that is a factor. There's probably multiple factors, but
vitamin C as well in sort of like fruit.
Yeah, your diet changed. I mean, I suppose maybe not so much now, but historically your diet would have changed a lot more, wouldn't it, in the winter? Because we were reliant on local produce. Maybe that's a factor. I don't know. Something to ponder, and it wasn't a story I was familiar with, so I thought I would share it. I've got another clip from Ivor. What comes next? Oh, we covered the Danish mass study. Was it last week or the week before? This sort of
it's probably a few weeks ago, I think.
A few weeks ago, they released the Danish study into mass, and we sort of went over it briefly. But Ivor has some more background information about what was going on with the scientists involved, which I thought beared repeating.
That's another scandal. So Denmark went ahead to do the only randomized control trial with SARS-CoV-2 and mask use. You know, blinded, not blinded, but randomized. And they got the results a couple of months ago and everyone was waiting for them. And eventually the lead author was pushed and he admitted that we can only publish it when we find a journal brave enough to. So all journals refused it. Now, if the trial had showed that masks helped in any way, all journals would have fought each other like dogs and cats to get hold of that paper, but they all did not want it. And the team were asked, well, why don't you preprint it and publish it as a preprint? And basically the lead author admitted that some people on the team were uncomfortable with the findings and they didn't really want it printed. So we know what it said, obviously. But that's censorship of science, of course, which Feynman, again, would be outraged by.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like you said last week about the scientists flying too close to the sun and getting involved in politics, you know, and not wanting to, you know, the purest form of the scientific method. You know, if you find a result, you should be publishing it and be damned with
or bad.
Be damned with the consequences. This is the best evidence we have. You know, political considerations should not be playing a part in science.
You should not even be considering whether something is good or bad. It just is.
No, because
it isn't.
I guess that's it. How do these guys separate themselves from the political paradigm that they're flung into? You know, this is the thing. It's probably easier said than done, and you know, they're reliant on funding. they're reliant on politics, you know, questions about scientific dogma, you know, it raises interesting questions, but I thought that extra information was useful, as we only covered it briefly. But yeah, like you said, the sort of they've sort of lost track of what they're there for.
Was he found it was on Unheard, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he said it was statistically insignificant. Was that what it was?
For the wearer.
For the wearer, but not for the people.
Well, Freddie asked about will it protect other people, and he said, well, we didn't look into that. That wasn't the aim of the study. It was they were only analysing whether there was a benefit to the wearer to wear a mask, and it was statistically insignificant. Anyway, moving on. I've got a quick clip from last week's show, actually. I've got a callback, and it was when we were talking about remdesivir.
Okay.
And this is what was said.
Who knew that the Gilead had taken over from Donald Trump's administration?
I'll have handmaidens next.
Well, I'll have handmaidens next. What's special about the handmaidens in The Handmaid's Tale?
They can have babies.
They're fertile.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've got cool hats. They've got their ears trimmed.
Sometimes they have to wear masks.
Yeah. I would say the primary factor is that they can procreate. That's why they're so valuable. So let's move on to this clip.
A Facebook post quickly spreading online claims a top Pfizer researcher is raising concerns about a potential COVID-19 vaccine. Bob Segal with our verified team looked into the claim that the vaccine could impact fertility.
Yes, this is the question that's been flooding our Verify inbox. Does the COVID-19 vaccine cause sterilization in women? And this is why so many people have been asking that question. It's a Facebook post that's widely circulating right now, claiming a head researcher for vaccine manufacturer Pfizer is warning that the company's new COVID vaccine would cause sterilization in women.
Who would be this researcher from Pfizer?
Facebook post.
The Facebook post was a blog reporting on a letter sent to the EMA this week by one Dr. Mike Yeadon.
Oh, Yeadon. Oh, I read that letter.
I couldn't.
Here's what we know about that social media post. Michael Yeadon did work for Pfizer until 2011 in the company's Allergy and Respiratory Research Unit. That's according to the British doctor's LinkedIn profile. And Yeadon, along with a German doctor, did send a letter to the European Medicines Agency asking the EMA to stop clinical trials of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. They said the vaccine might block a protein that's important in the formation of a placenta. And the doctors claim that could possibly result in vaccinated women essentially becoming infertile. While the social media post implies the vaccine will cause infertility, that's not what the doctors actually said. Their petition raises questions, using phrases like, if the vaccine works a certain way, it could lead to infertility. Is that a real possibility? Well, 13 News reached out directly to Pfizer for answers.
Oh, we're going to hear from the goose's mouth.
The company's response, not exactly helpful, simply stating, we are not commenting on that.
No comment. Interesting note from the trials, if you've read what scant data there is from the trials, you weren't allowed to take part if you were either pregnant or looking, and you can't conceive within 28 days of the end of the trial.
Isn't that kind of standard?
That's standard, yeah.
Yeah.
For this kind of thing.
Yeah, so there's no data, you see. So, and the trial hasn't finished, has it? So when the trial eventually finishes, 28 days after that, trial participants will then presumably be able to get on with their life, and we'll find out then if they can conceive. It's an issue with the spike protein. He has. There's a compound, I think it's called syncytin, which is crucial in the formation of a placenta. And Yeadon is concerned that the vaccine could create an antibody response that would eliminate this syncytin and prevent the creation of placenta. It's funny, if you go to Snopes, Snopes says false. And do you know why it says false? Because the Facebook blog used the word sterile instead of infertile.
Fucking hell.
And they're medically different terms. So sterile, you can't conceive. Infertile means you can conceive, but you can't carry a pregnancy to the end. And they also called it false because they stated that he was head of research at Pfizer when he wasn't. He was head of research. He's former head of research of respiratory. But yeah, false. Completely false. Taking a notice, nothing to see here.
There's something in the Lancet here. There's a study going on about impaired spermatogenesis in COVID-19 patients, so male fertility.
Yeah,
they're only saying they're looking into it, and they're not suggesting that anything's been found.
No, well, this is the problem with it. There is no long-term safety data, unfortunately. So there is a risk involved in that, and you know, I mean, I'm quite happy with my 2 kids. It doesn't bother me, but you know, giving it to people who are at low risk, I think, is pretty. I don't know if reckless is too strong a word. Maybe not.
Risky, potentially risky.
Yeah.
Haphazard.
The next story is fucking crazy. This is
more crazy.
Oh my god, yeah. Sticking with the vaccine, we got some bad news from Scott Morrison, Prime Minister of Australia, regarding Australians' vaccine drive.
All he really wanted for Christmas was a local vaccine, but
the University of Queensland vaccine will not be able to proceed.
50 million planned doses scrapped after triggering false positive results for HIV.
As in science, things don't always go right. It's certainly a tough day for the team.
The UQ vaccine applied a molecular clamp closing the coronavirus spikes using an HIV protein which falsely triggered infection markers.
That's not reckless, is it? Injecting people with a HIV protein? Sounds a bit sus to me.
Everybody who had the vaccine did show some level of false positive result.
One of them, Mel Stott.
I can totally understand where they're coming from, but I still have no concerns about my health or anybody else's health.
The vaccine was proving effective in trials and the participants were at no risk, but
the risk to vaccine confidence was the principal issue here.
Vaccine expert Professor Nikolai Petrovsky says he raised the alarm early.
Our feeling was it was too experimental a technology to be rolled out.
No warnings were ignored at all.
Professor Murphy says the risk of false positives was always known but considered small.
Unfortunately, it just became a bigger problem than anyone had anticipated.
Oh, what a shame. We just didn't anticipate it being such a big problem.
So why would you use a HIV protein, Ben? Is it the right shape?
It coats the virus,
and
then stops it going into other cells and taking over other cells.
Right. What did he call it? He's just mentioned it. Then I can't remember what I do. Right, that's it's CSL, isn't it? Who've done that?
What fucking got me about this is that he comes out and said we had to stop it because we were worried that this would affect vaccine confidence.
Yeah.
How fucking stupid do they think we are? No, the reason you stopped is that if you give this to the entire population, everyone in the population would test positive for HIV. Then how do you know who the fuck actually has HIV?
Yeah.
That's why it was stopped. It's fucking insane.
That is why it was stopped. I think that's what they've said. But this politician guy.
Fucking guinea pigs or what? It's just fucking boggles me.
That woman, those people on that, are they going to have test positive for
forever?
HIV forever, yeah? Or is it going to get processed out?
Who fucking knows? Who fucking cares? We don't care. We don't care. It's just an experiment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like playing God.
Mm. Well, you do. I mean, what about that crazy the drug trial? Have you not seen that documentary?
Oh yeah, that's awful. It's difficult watching that.
And they kill people by accident because he gives them 10,000 times the dose by accident, like the decimal points in the wrong place or something.
We talked about
it. A couple of guys are still fucked up real bad.
I think people died, didn't they?
Yeah, people did die, yeah, but some of the survivors have been messed up.
Wasn't it that they didn't wait or maybe some new rules were brought in? So you have to wait, give the first guy the injection, then wait, 20 minutes, give it 20 minutes, then do the next one. Oh, yeah, he's still alive after 19.5 minutes. Fucking jab the next one. Fucking mad, isn't it?
Well, they did. They basically, in that trial, he did 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, by the time he got to, the 10th one.
First one was dead.
The first one was going crazy and they couldn't figure out what was
fucking
happening.
Nuts. Anyway, I just thought that was wild, the HIV one, but,
Yeah, that's bizarre, that, isn't it?
Let's get off vaccines. The Office for National Statistics got themselves in a bit of hot water this week. I got a clip from the Malin Baker show. Previous guest, Malin Baker. He's going to give us a bit of a rundown on it.
Mm-hmm. This was the week where the first vaccinations took place. Government ministers even got tearful about it. Others perhaps got tearful when it was noticed that the official statistics on which the most recent lockdown just ended was based have been revised downwards. When the decision was taken for lockdown, the latest survey from the Office of National Statistics was showing that the incidence of COVID in the community had surged from 4.3 per 10,000 people to 9.52 on the 17th of October. But in the latest survey, dated 4th of December, the ONS had revised those historical numbers. Now the 17th of October is shown back down at 4.89 people per 10,000. So was that second lockdown an unnecessary self-inflicted wound?
Strange, sort of going back and retrospectively changing the numbers. You would hope that they would produce 2 data sets. Just open another tab in Excel and, have your undoctored figures and your doctored figures. The ones we said at the time and then the ones that we've gone back and changed retrospectively. It would make it easier to, when the public inquiry comes, if, we had 2 sets of data, the ones that people actually made decisions on based at the time. And then
someone will be gathering that. Many, many thousands of people will be gathering that.
You got to hope so, haven't you? Yeah. Got to hope so, because we need the data. Otherwise, you can't learn anything. In fact, Malin talked about this when we had him on the show. I'm sure he did. You got to the accuracy of your data collection has to be paramount if you hope to learn anything. Otherwise, we're going to be back here again when the next new novel coronavirus or influenza strain or whatever comes, and we need to learn the lessons. Anyway, The Guardian broke a big story this week about corruption between the WHO and the Italians. Which this week, I've got a little clip, a little report.
The World Health Organization has been accused of conspiring with Italian Health Ministry to remove a report on COVID-19. The report revealed the country's mismanagement at the beginning of the pandemic. The publication of the report was intended to prevent future deaths. The report was by WHO scientist Francesco Zambon, and it was to provide information to countries yet to suffer a major impact.
So this is early on. It's in May. And the WHO is asked to produce a report as the thing is breaking so that we can learn lessons and get information to other countries quickly to help with their preparedness. And this is what they decided to do.
Of the pandemic. According to reports by The Guardian, the document was published on the website of the World Health Organization on the 13th of May before being taken down the very next day. The report said Italy's pandemic plan had not been updated since 2006 and that Due to being unprepared, the initial response from hospitals in Italy was improvised, chaotic, and creative.
So the report was very derogatory towards the Italians' pandemic preparedness, sort of mechanisms. But it was taken down 24 hours later. So fuck those other countries who haven't had it yet. We're going to take this down. There must be a good reason for this. Must be statistical anomalies or incorrect reporting. Why would they do this when there's lives at stake?
The report highlighted that because of this, it took time for formal guidance to become available. The document was allegedly removed at the request of Ranieri Guerra, who's the World Health Organization's Assistant Director General for...
So Assistant Director General at WHO says, whoa, you've got to remove this. Okay, let's find out why.
For strategic initiatives. He was the Director General for Preventive Health at the Italian Health Ministry and was responsible for updating the pandemic plan as well.
So the part of the report criticised Italy for not updating its pandemic preparedness framework since 2006. The guy who was responsible for that now works at the WHO, and he happens to be the guy who decided to pull this report.
Guerra is also among the scientists on the Italian government's COVID-19 task force.
He's also on the Italian government's task force.
Oh, no.
The World Health Organization...
I mean, it absolutely stinks. It reeks.
I think, has he not been charged with something as well? Or they're trying to get him?
He should be charged with crimes against humanity, if this is true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember saying when it all was kicking off in Italy, we were talking about them just not following like basic quarantine and, guidance and stuff at the time, when it was like in Bergamo or wherever.
I don't know if I've played the clip on the show before, but you can find news articles from 2017-18 of Italian's health service being overrun in December. It gets overrun every year.
It's just like ours. Yeah.
It's
if
a
you
lot.
went to the NHS's everything.
Yeah.
I think there's degrees of shitness.
Okay.
And I think the Italian one is particularly shit when it comes to dealing with winter pressures.
Okay.
But that was the trigger, wasn't it? That was the springboard for locking down Europe, was Italy. And Spain to a degree as well. Madrid. So, yeah, I don't know. It just stinks of corruption and covering your own back.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? He's covering his own back because he's gone, oh, fuck me, I was supposed to update that like 10 years ago and I never did.
Yeah, it was kind of my job that I didn't do. Yeah. But, he moved on from there to a cushy job at the WHO, so quid's in.
Yeah.
Fuck,
Mm-hmm.
It just...
Sorry.
Go on. No?
Just on the healthcare slowdown and stuff. In the winter of 1999 to 2000, the NHS almost ground to a complete halt because of an outbreak of flu. Almost all non-emergency operations were cancelled, and the country at one point was left with just 2 intensive care beds, with patients shuttled hundreds of miles in search of somewhere to stay.
Wow.
Yeah.
1999-2000. That's from a report again in the Guardian, 27th of October 2001.
I had pretty bad tonsillitis that winter.
It's your fault, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, it's the nature of our health services that it's designed to run at capacity.
I don't think we're down to 2 intensive care beds now, though, are we?
No, I mean, they always have, I think they always aim to have some sort of headroom, particularly going
10%, isn't it, I think?
10.
5 to 10%.
And they expect to use the majority of that headroom.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's there for.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Strange one. The big thing is excess deaths. The big thing that we'll be able to look at in the future is excess deaths. And whether all this was worth it.
Let's see if it drops as well next year.
Well, it dropped last year and the year before. This is why we had so much... It's not a nice phrase to use, but dry wood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same with Sweden. Sweden had a very soft 19 2020 season and the season before, same as we. Now, people say, oh, Sweden, look at the other Nordics, look at Finland and Denmark. They had much harsher seasons than Sweden in the 2 previous winters. That's a big factor in the disparity. And so did we. But you got to look at these things in the round, and the more I look at it, the more I think government intervention is not a major factor in your outcome. But that's just my thinking. I think we've got the last one from COVID. Bit of karma.
Yeah,
got a bit of karma coming. Bit of karma coming for Kay Burley.
Some news about Sky News now. A small number of Sky News staff attended a social event in London last Saturday evening, during which COVID guidelines were breached. As a result of an internal review, Sky News presenter Kay Burley has agreed to be off-air for 6 months, and political editor Beth Rigby and correspondent Inzamam Rashid have agreed to be off-air for 3 months. All of those involved regret the incident and have apologised. Everyone here at Sky News is expected to comply with the rules, and the company takes breaches of this very seriously indeed.
Was she reporting on herself then, in a third person?
No, that
Kay Burley.
That wasn't Kay Burley with the article, no. She was having her 60th.
Yeah,
yeah, she had all her journal mates round for a party.
Yeah.
You're only 60 once.
Yeah, you're only 60 once. You know, philosophically, I sort of agree with her. I think you should be able to have a 60th birthday party if you want. The problem is that I wasn't hounding Dominic Cummings day after day after day after day.
Yeah.
You know, this is where the problem is. It's almost as if they don't really care about the COVID and they're just going to do what they want.
Yeah.
And then they go on TV and, you know, give us the daily deaths and the daily cases. It's very strange. Yeah. It's strange, isn't it?
It's a job, isn't it?
It's a job, but you know, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But you know,
you live by the mask.
I think she should resign. To be honest, seeing as that's what she was calling for anyone else, the SNP, MP or Dominic Cummings, resign. Do you not think he should resign? Well, are you going to resign now, Kay? I don't think so.
She got Channel 4 News.
Yeah. One more story. I couldn't find a clip in English for this story. So have you heard have you heard about the Austrian MP?
No.
Oh my god! This Austrian MP was giving a speech in front of the Austrian Parliament, and halfway through his speech, he pulls out one of the government-procured rapid tests,
right?
Undoes it, puts it in his glass of Coca-Cola, carries on with his speech, and then it comes out positive.
For fuck's sake.
It's funny. Make of that what you will. I don't know.
I mean, you've seen what Coke does to a penny, so I'm not surprised it fucked up a serological test.
Well, it's a funny thing about the PCR test. You know, the guy who invented it, Kerry Mullins, I should have pulled the clip, but I didn't think we'd be talking about the PCR tonight. But there's a clip of him saying, like, essentially, if you increase the cycles enough, you can find anything in anything. Yeah. He said it makes you question your sort of philosophy of reality and look to like Eastern mysticism. You know, like you can magnify. If you magnify enough, you'll find anything you want.
There's only 4 bases in DNA, isn't there?
You know what I'd like?
CTG.
You know what I'd like them to do as just a one-off experiment. How many PCR tests do we do a day? Do you think maybe 100,000 now?
No,
more than that. Yeah.
All right, 200,000. So, I mean, and it's about 140 quid, isn't it? 140 quid. So 140. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, the rapid test is, I think it's £3.
Oh, right, okay.
And that's 95% effective rather than 98. So, yeah, it would make more sense to do 2 rapid tests 24 hours apart than a PCR that takes 3 or 4 days. But, you know, I'm not a Tory with mates who make PCR tests, am I? So, that's not going to happen, is it? But, you know, it got me thinking, if they just for one day, just them 200,000 tests, if they would make you do 2 swabs, and test one for COVID-19 and one for HIV and see what the results are. And see if we end up with, oh, crikey, we've got 15,000 HIV cases today. I don't know. It might work. I think it's a worthwhile experiment.
Yeah. It's got legs.
Oh, dear. Well, should we move on from COVID? I've only a couple of little bits of miscellaneous stuff. I've not looked at the time. Oh, we're not
trying to squeeze an episode of The Crown in before bed.
Give over, you waster. Why are you wasting your life on that bullshit?
No, I've got to get through as much as I can before Cold Midwife comes back for a Christmas special.
God, do you know? No one got to the deathbed and thought, I wish I'd spend more time watching Netflix.
Yeah, because no one's died yet of the Netflix generation.
Insert your useless nonsense pastime. It doesn't have to be Netflix. Anyway. Well, yeah. I wonder if anyone said, I wish I'd spent more time masturbating.
Quite a few priests, you would hope.
No, I think they probably masturbate more than the average.
They're not allowed, are they?
No, they just fuck kids instead.
Not to my knowledge.
No, allegedly. Let's do some miscellaneous stuff. Breaking news, just in.
Okay.
Hunter Biden is in trouble.
The American media this week reported the fact that federal prosecutors are probing the taxes and other conduct for one Hunter Biden. Why is that of interest? Seems like this Hunter Biden may have been up to a few bad things, probably should be investigated. Except, of course, before the election, the media were steadfastly refusing to report on investigations into Hunter Biden. The New York Post was banned from Twitter for publishing a story about Hunter Biden. Facebook decided to downgrade stories in advance of a fact check. The media suggested the New York Post story was Russian disinformation, even though Hunter Biden didn't actually deny the substance of the story as reported. I covered the story on this channel. I even asked the question, I wonder if they'll suddenly discover the story after the election's passed. I literally asked that question.
This popped up on my new stuff.
Yeah, that was Malin Baker, by the way. Previous guest Malin Baker. Check out the Malin Baker show again for more impartial news.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked about it, did we not?
This dodgy Ukraine thing. Was it not something else that he's been arrested for? It's not the Ukraine thing, is it?
He's fucking filthy. He's got all sorts of shit on him.
Is he the coke fiend as well?
Coke or crack? I can't remember. Or it might have been meth.
Both.
The point is, and Malin makes a really good point, newspapers aren't obliged to report on a story. Right.
No.
So a newspaper like the New York Times doesn't have to run a story on Hunter Biden. The New York Post did. The problem is that social media, Twitter in particular, actively suppress this.
Yes.
And that is a very dangerous place to be in. You can't trust them.
Yeah, big tech.
Well, social media again. It's political. It's become a political thing. They hide behind being a platform, and they're not a platform. They're not a platform anymore. They're a publisher, and they're publishing what you see and decide on what you should be able to see and what you can't. And that's why I predict an exodus from platforms like Twitter and YouTube and Facebook. Because you just can't trust them. You can't trust them to tell you the truth. And it's a very dodgy place to be in. I mean, I'm sure they censored Trump. Trump's tweets about Hunter Biden. Twitter. They probably put fact checks over it and all sorts. They do all sorts of this meddling. It's meddling. And they're not supposed to be doing that. Twitter shouldn't be in the position of deciding what is the truth and what isn't.
Yeah.
They
should just be a publisher. Platform.
A platform. If it's truly a platform, then it wouldn't. Which is the point you're getting at.
Yeah.
I understand.
I mean, YouTube's original slogan was broadcast yourself. Well, it's not now. It's broadcast to yourself, but play by our rules, and if we don't like what you broadcast, we'll remove your right to broadcast yourself. I've signed up for Odyssey this week. We're going on Odyssey, which is a YouTube alternative, and it's linked to crypto.
All right.
So I think I've got the first video up there. It was pretty painless. So yeah, if you're listening, check us out on Odyssey. I'll probably put the link in the show notes and try and get that going, because they don't censor people essentially. So,
cool. I'll go topless next week.
Yeah.
Please don't.
Nigella Lawson's back in our screens.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Talk about a class act. Listen to how she pronounces the word microwave.
Now, I'm aiming for quite a solid mash at this stage, but I still need a bit of milk, full fat, which I've warmed in the microwave.
The
microwave.
In the microwave.
The microwave.
She's never heard of a microwave before, has she?
It's a joke.
Yeah.
It's like Trigger from Only Fools and Horses and Dell when he's doing his embellishments of words. That's from Only Fools and Horses. Anyone who's listening who might be under 90.
Right. Moving on.
That's it.
Yeah.
Done. I didn't get any more clips. I saw the clips. We raced through that. It's only 7
Hang on a
past
minute.
10.
Where's my clip?
You didn't produce a clip.
It's my clip.
What was the clip you produced?
I sent the two clips, in fact. I sent one with our favourite health secretary on, Hat Mancock, being grilled by peers.
Oh, last week?
No. And also, my story about Trump.
A story or a clip?
It was a clip as well on the website, if you press the link. They said he's the first president to be still executing people. Well, first of all, he reinstated federal executions. I think they hadn't taken place for 70 years. I might be wrong with that. And he's the first president for 130 years to still execute people in between. In the transition period, basically.
Okay, let's find out.
Erecting a cordon around the death penalty. Several protesters demonstrated outside the U.S. Department of Justice on Thursday, demanding an abrupt end to federal executions.
I personally have experienced taking a mother down to the death row in Ohio as she watched her son being executed. I wasn't in the room with her, but she fainted. She fainted watching her child get killed. And so, isn't she also a victim of the death penalty?
Protests were sparked by the execution of 40-year-old Brandon Bernard for a crime he committed as an 18-year-old. Bernard was convicted in 2000, along with accomplice Christopher Villalva, of carjacking and murdering Todd and Stacey Bagley on an army base in Texas. Villalva
was on death row for 18 years.
No, he was 18 when he killed these people. And now he's 40, so he's 22 years he's been on death row.
Oh, he's convicted in 2000, it said.
So he's been on 20 years. Yeah, lots of them have been on for decades.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard. It's hard legally to kill people.
This is, you might say it in the article.
Unless you label them a foreign combatant, then it's really easy. Just drop a drone, Hellfire missile.
This is what the thing is, they're starting to question whether or not it's financially viable, because it costs so much to battle it legally, plus it's really difficult to get hold of the drugs to kill them. People don't want to supply them.
There's a shortage,
so whether it's worth it.
They're on about bringing back the firing squad. Because,
really?
Yeah, like a year ago. Yeah, because they were struggling to get hold of that chemical compound, whatever it is. That is part of the... And not just that, there is a long... track record of lethal injection going wrong.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? It gets suspended all the time, don't they?
Yeah, and just people getting really fucked up and surviving, or being, just comatose and, just horrible things happening. So yeah, they were talking about bringing back the firing squad a while ago.
Is it a myth that in the firing squad only one of them has live ammunition, the others have blanks, so none of them know who's killed the guy?
I've heard that story. I don't know if there's any truth to it or not.
I don't know. It kind of makes sense. I mean,
what happens if you go, well, I'm not going to aim at him, and you've got the bullets?
Oh yes,
you lose your job, don't you, on the firing squad?
Yeah, great.
Do you get one shot as well? If you don't die from firing squad, is that it's like if you
like hanging?
The guillotine breaks or the trapdoor doesn't open on the hanging.
Yeah, acts of God. I would say so.
Yeah. Well, the thing.
Go on.
I was just going to say the best. I was watching. I think I might have talked about this before on here, but the best way to kill someone, or the most humane way, seems to be nitrogen poisoning, nitrous oxide, because you basically euphoric when you die. So why don't you just do that?
Why have they not thought of this before?
I don't know.
There must be a reason.
I don't know. Is it flammable or something? You like flood a chamber with it.
Once you've anaesthetised someone, you can do pretty much what you wanted to finish them off, surely.
Yeah.
No, never mind having to have whatever that pentobarbital. I don't know if is that truth serum or something.
I suppose I think the thing is it probably has to be in law, doesn't it? What you have to use in the process or something. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, there must have been a precedent set at some point, and then to sort of change that opens another legal can of worms. Then, doesn't it? Because it's a big deal, the state having the right to execute its citizens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it's not cool.
No. Well, the thing is I know I'm saying that like Trump's the first president to kind of execute these people in 130 years. But if you actually read what these people have done, I stopped after a bit because it's like child murderers and all this kind of fucked up stuff that they've done. But this guy, play the rest of the story and see what he says.
Coupled at close range, and soon after, Bernard set the car on fire. But while government experts determined that the fire ultimately caused the death of Stacey Bagley, defense attorneys argued it was never proven. The case prompted over 500,000 people to sign a petition urging President Trump to intervene, with reality television star Kim Kardashian among those revealing her devastation at Thursday's outcome. Bernard became the 9th federal inmate to be executed since July, when the Trump administration resumed federal executions after a 17-year hiatus.
I think the number that we've seen from the Trump administration is astronomical compared to what we've seen from previous administrations combined. I think it's clear that they're trying to rush the execution process.
It's been on hiatus for 17 years.
Yeah, so George Bush was the last. That's it. It wasn't 70. It was 70.
Fucking weird flex.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Bizarre one.
Executions during a presidential transfer of power are particularly rare, with the last taking place in the 1890s. 4 more, including one on Friday, are planned in the weeks before President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration.
That's it.
So yeah, that. But when you read about it, I think it must be in the article there. It kind of says that there was a few of them. The other one's been executed already. Who shot them? But this guy was 18 and he set fire to the car. But they kind of say, the prosecution say that because there was scorch marks or something, smoke inhalation marks on the girl, that potentially she was still alive when he set fire to the car, basically.
That's the defence?
Prosecution said that about them. So and the defence refuted, basically say that it's not possible to say that.
One of the big things about the death penalty is that, well, there's loads of fucking problems with it, but you only have to get it wrong once, don't you?
Well, it's been wrong loads of times, and it will be going forwards. I think the thing is he acknowledges that he did something wrong, but there's an argument, I suppose, in his case, and more there's an argument in his case for him to stay in prison for the rest of his life rather than be executed. And he went back to like the prosecutor and some people on the jury. So I don't know if it's one of those states where the jury decides whether or not you have the death penalty. And 5 said they would change their mind. The prosecutor said he wouldn't go for the death penalty anymore for him. So it's easy to say that, isn't it? But still did horrible things.
It doesn't seem like what a civilized society would do.
No, you'd be frozen in time and then released in 200 years.
Do you know, if you haven't seen it recently, go back and watch Demolition Man. Because it's so true with what's happening now.
Yeah.
It was so predictive.
Yeah.
And politics and...
Maybe, whoa.
Oligarchy.
Yeah.
We should get the script.
Yeah, do some
ELS. Yeah.
I'm going to have to email TJ now, aren't I?
Yeah. Can you get a data file of the Demolition Man script?
John Spartan, you've been fined 5 credits for breaching the verbal moralities code.
Yeah.
I had to use the 3C shows. Do you know what Sandra Bullock's character is called?
No.
Huxley.
Oh.
Aldous.
Yeah.
After Aldous Huxley.
And
there were no mugs. They knew what they were doing when they were writing that script. It's actually... All right, it's got, explosions and Wesley Snipes and stuff, but Wesley Snipes is fucking brilliant in it. Simon Phoenix. Phoenix that rises from the flames.
Yes.
There's all sorts of really clever stuff in that film, and it bears watching.
I watched it for years. Maybe I'll look it up.
I'll tell you, it's a media studies wet dream, that film.
Did you deconstruct it for media studies, Phil?
No, because I didn't really go to media studies.
There was an issue with media studies, Philip.
Yeah, the issue was I didn't want to fucking be there.
Weren't we all in the same class at one point?
I don't know, really.
I think we were.
I did media studies for 2 weeks and then thought, oh, fuck this, let's do a real subject.
There's a great rant in Demolition Man by the Edgar Friendly, who's played by that comedian. And,
is he the kingpin, Edgar Friendly?
No, he's the underground leader, the leader of the rebellion.
Oh, right, okay.
And I've been meaning to clip it. I had it on my list this week, but we had that much stuff. I had that much stuff to clip. I didn't. It's like an evergreen. It's always going to be relevant. So I'm saving it for a slow week. So maybe next week you'll hear Edgar Friendly's rant.
Right.
About the underclass in San Angeles in the year 20. When was it set? 20. It was set like 10 years in the future, isn't it, Duff?
No, it was more than that.
No, it's
like 100 years.
No way. It's like 2020.
It's not.
But yeah,
it's a Christmas special next week, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, is it Secret Santa next Sunday?
27th. 27th. What do you mean? It'll have to be.
It's the last one before Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Nope. Well, it is, but it's not. It's not the Christmas special. If you looked at the Google Calendar, you would see that next week we have
okay, 27th.
We've got a swap cast with Deborah Gets Red Pilled next week.
Oh shit! Yeah,
for God's sake!
Oh, I'll tell you, what a great concept for a podcast.
It's on Netflix.
What? Deborah Gets Red Pilled?
Demolition Man.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, I was in the middle of plugging next week's show. So, Deborah Gets Red Pilled is a guy called Adam.
2032.
And Adam has started a podcast with his mother-in-law.
Nice.
And
yes.
He's gradually red pilling his mother-in-law. They've had Charlie Robinson on. And Truthzilla and all sorts of other sort of alt history conspiracy podcasters on. I just love I think it's a brilliant concept, getting his mother-in-law and gradually red pilling her. So we're doing a swapcast. That's coming up next week.
Okay.
And oh man, I forgot to swap my leads around because you made me get my phone out. Oh, it was going so slick. So that's coming next week. Secret Santa will be the week after, the 27th.
27th? That's not even Christmas anymore.
What's it? All right. Well, tough.
It's the last day of the 5-day freedom train.
Could we?
The freedom train. No, it's only 3 households.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, 3 households.
Over the period. Are you not planning on seeing any family?
Yeah, I've not seen anyone else.
No.
There's not.
No. I don't think, and you've already said you're no.
No.
Yeah.
It's fine by me. I don't give a shit.
It's decided.
Right, okay, yeah. We can come round then, can't we?
Right. That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's tidy up a bit.
I will. There's just like spunk rags everywhere.
I know, just like meters and meters of fucking balled up toilet paper.
Yeah, just a solitary cucumber in the corner.
I thought it was going to be a salad.
Oh my god! Yeah, so join us for next week. We'll be back with Deborah Gets Red Pill. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out the YouTube and the Odyssey and all that shit. Follow us on social. Build back better. Wakanda forever. Epstein didn't kill himself. Get fucked. See you later.
An old friend is here. Oh, shit. Fuck.